Thank you, Brother Marco. That was excellent. So I'm a little bit of a fanboy right here, sitting next to this powerhouse. I mean, to sit down and have a conversation with what could easily be presidential candidates in the future. It is an absolute honor to be here. So thank you, brethren. Show of hands, who has heard of MLS, the Masonic Legacy Society? And of those who have your hands raised, could you explain what it is to someone else? Leave your hand up. Ish. Okay, good. So I think what we'll do is we'll start at the kind of ground level. We'll build a foundation of what it is and kind of work our way from there, just so everyone is on the same level. A quick order of business. The Fraternal Review did dedicate an entire issue to the Masonic Legacy Society. So if anybody wants to learn more, you can, of course, pick that up. And a quick shout out to our new editor-in-chief, Angel Millar, for helping guide the Fraternal Review for this year and years to come, hopefully. So with that, I wanted to read from the guest editor's word and tell you a little bit of a story here, one paragraph. In 2017, a fantastic group of Masons from around the nation gathered in Washington, D.C., with the generous help of the John E. Fetzer Memorial Trust, which is now dissolved. And the group evolved over the 3 years, and all the while, it was working on a secret, top secret project, which is a carefully crafted document entitled The Art of Practicing Our Mysteries. The group's ambitious goal was, simply stated, to deepen one's awareness of and experience with the practice of Freemasonry. And this group hoped that through all of the work that Freemasonry might reawaken the spirit of the past, revitalize the craftsmen within our temples, and preserve this great experiment well past the 250th anniversary of our country. I love this panel because you come away from conferences, meetings, thinking, what's next? We've heard the agenda, we've heard the content, what is next? So I'll posit this idea with all of you. The Masonic Legacy Society provides an approach, a framework of what could be next for you to bring to your lodge, bring to your groups. And I just want to leave you with that as we build from there. So, Brother Akram, tell us about the founding vision of the MLS, and in your own words, what is the Masonic Legacy Society?
Well, first, let me say thank you very much. It is a great pleasure and honor to be with you and reaching out to whoever is connecting to us online. First, let me say one thing. The Masonic Legacy Society, although it sounds like an organization, it is not. So it is not incorporated, has no bank account, has no board of directors, there's no membership. It is more of a forum, and Masons came together in order to work on that famous project. So let me explain. 4 years from now, 2026, marks the 250th anniversary of the United States. But for a Freemason who's really engaged into the deeper meaning of the fraternity, would understand that the founding of the United States was part of an extraordinary project that Benjamin Franklin alluded to as a great experiment, and George Washington put it in writing on January 25th, 1791, when he said, and I'm quoting, "We are engaged in the last great experiment to promote human happiness," unquote. And the idea had to do with what this whole experiment is going to be about. Can the people really govern themselves by themselves under their own rule of law that has their own consent without needing a monarch to rule over them and keep them from destroying one another? Because please keep in mind, while they called themselves British, the English did not like the Scots did not like the Irish, There were 13 colonies with 13 official religions. And let's not talk about Protestants and Catholics and the various Protestant groups. Let's not talk about slavery. Let's not talk about Indians, what we call first Americans today, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Can this really work? Now, Freemasonry was essential. And coming back quickly to the MLS, and that is, today, as this country approaches its 250th anniversary, the Freemasons of today, whether they like it or not, are the trustees of a legacy. And the legacy was launching this great experiment. Masonic lodges were really the incubators. Mark, listen to me, my dear friends and brethren, and brethren, whether you are a brother Mason of the female or the male, because in my book, Masonry is both for men and women, and they all need their own space to become, because it's about being a free builder, period. So Freemasonry had lodges. Benjamin Franklin printed the constitutions. Next year marks the 300th anniversary of the 1723 constitutions of Freemasonry, and there's going to be a big event hosted in Washington, D.C. at the George Washington Masonic Memorial. You'll hear about this. Is very important, understanding how the concept of constitutions defined a new concept of identity beyond tribalism, your ethnicity, your religion, your nationality, what part of the world, what socioeconomic class. It was a new construct of identity, which is mirror to that. Think of the US Constitution as defining a new construct of identity. What does it mean to be an American, irrespective of your tribal background? So Benjamin Franklin printed them. They were spread throughout the colonies. In every town, Masonic lodges were created to attract the pillars of the community. And pillars meaning the baker, the smith, the pastor, it didn't matter. Whoever was building and contributing to the building of their community. So they would learn self-governance and they would learn to respect one another. So, back to now. What is happening? Look at the challenges that we are facing in our country. And this is why Freemasonry, and I've heard that before being said over and over again, Freemasonry is needed more than ever. What we need to do is get back to the fundamentals of Freemasonry. So what we need is as many enlightened citizens today, men and women, enlightened citizens in all of our communities across the country. So we're running against the clock here. So our gathering was, can we create something that individuals could use, Masons across the country could use as a methodology to help them understand how to deepen their understanding in Freemasonry? One. Second, people who may be interested in the craft and knocking at the door, let them knock for the right reasons. And that is why the document and the methodology associated with it are free. They're available. We put them in different languages. Go to visit the website and you will see a lot about that. So what is the idea? Is to create a community of freedom. John Fetzer, in his Masonic writings, which did not make it to the public, and that I happened to discover as that trust reached out to me to understand what are these things, Masonic stuff he never talked about. What is it? He talked about creating a community of freedom, Freemasonry. So our approach is simple. Ask questions, but all the questions about the deeper meaning of the craft. The ritual has an exoteric and an esoteric. And what makes a man or a woman better is not the exoteric. It is the esoteric, because transformation is hidden. And that's what esoteric means. Please, it simply means hidden. So you need to dig deeper into it. So ask the right questions. That's it. And simple questions to start with. What this part of ritual, what is it that we're doing in opening, closing a lodge, in every aspect of the ritual? How does this help me become free and a Mason? That's your journey. Initiatic society. Your goal is to become a master free builder. Therefore, every time you should ask, cable tow, how does this relate to me becoming free? Obligation, how does this relate to make me free? You have to find your own answer. But we in this document can help point you to ways how to ask those questions. That's how you better yourself. I'll shut up.
Wow. Woo! I think that's only after 2 espressos. We need it. So let's turn our attention to the other 2 fine Masons that are sitting here. What is your involvement now in MLS, and what was your involvement during the kind of the construct or the forming of the Masonic Legacy Society?
Thank you. So I came in a little bit later in the project. I came in 2019 in December. Robert Johnson called me and said, "Can you make it to Phoenix?" And, you know, a few weeks. And when Robert Johnson asks you to do something, especially when he says Dago's involved and Chuck Dunning and, you know, Akram and all these other guys, you kind of just drop what you're doing to do it, right? So we went to Phoenix and we were really there to myself and a few others, Baruti, Kemet Sisabong, and a few others were there basically to help put the finishing touches on it and think about ways that it would be useful out, you know, as it came from an idea to being something that was implemented. And then after that, seeing that that was 2019, we moved forward to try to do some facilitating and training facilitators to teach people how to use this process. And so my role at that point was as one of the facilitators, teaching people how to use this process. And continues to be so, and doing things like today and speaking and bringing this message with Akram and everybody else on what an important process this is and how we can use it.
Thank you. Yeah, and we will get into the how-to, the application, the practical aspect of facilitation, training, implementation. But Brother Brad, what's your involvement now?
Yeah, so good to see everybody again. My involvement was a year later. I too got a phone call from RJ, said, "Brad, we have a 2-day workshop. We've been spending almost 3 years putting this document and this process together, and we want you to be a guinea pig to see if this actually works." So again, when RJ calls you, you say, okay. So I spent 2 days going through the very first facilitators workshop, which was kind of led by Akram and Mike, Baruti, Chuck, a couple others, basically to learn what the document was, what this process was, what is MLS. I'll tell you, the very first time Akram told us what MLS was, it was a lot longer than he just gave to you. It was about 4 hours worth. But so I was involved since the beginning of the facilitation process, and have then since gone on to facilitate a lot of sessions, virtually and in person, and then also be a part of additional classes to basically train trainers. So help new facilitators go through the process and go on. So I've been involved since I guess it was the spring of 2020.
Nice. Well, thank you all for being here again. We see from our initiated brethren that continued education is a primary desire, right? I mean, look at those still sitting here in this room on day 3 of a somewhat long conference. So I'm curious, how is MLS addressing this desire for continued Masonic education?
So I think it's interesting that we're occupying a space that had not been addressed before, in that a lot of times when you think of education, it's in a sage on the stage speaking to somebody and them just internalizing it. But MLS came from a different point of view, and I think at the right time, because this generation of Masons seems to want to internalize and personalize things. They don't want to just be told what to think. We're told what to think enough within media and everything else. So to be able to validate your own way of looking at the world, and to be able to look at Freemasonry and know that your understanding of a symbol is as important, or you could argue more important, than Mackey's interpretation or any other Masonic author. that it's really the way that you internalize it and the way that it helps you become a better man and to help you understand the world and move in the world and understand your masculinity, as was talked about in the last panel, and understand how to use that in a productive way. I think that's the space that we're in, and that's what we're helping provide, because it's not really out there a lot. You don't see that opportunity very much as a platform.
Yeah, and I would say, to piggyback off what Mike just said, to tie it to what Akram said earlier, MLS, at least in my experience, we tie almost everything to the ritual some way, somehow. So what I've seen in the individuals that I've been, part of either facilitation with, or I have ongoing sessions every 6 weeks. These individuals were taught about the ritual, what it means. They went through, their ritual. They may have had received a good experience about the understanding of that ritual, maybe told how to apply that in real life. But then whether it's years later or some cases decades later, they often forget just that how do we apply this? How can we sit and contemplate or meditate or focus on taking that part of the ritual and applying it real time, real life? And again, being from Kentucky, the whole idea of, contemplative discussion and meditation is different. But, I've experienced a lot of local brothers that have always had these thoughts and always had these wants, but never knew where to go to actually ask the question of, what am I supposed to do with all this? So the opportunity that I've seen in my experience has been really kind of awakening those already lingering questions, just giving the framework and the understanding how to process that. Not in a direct, you have to do it this way, because that's not what we do, but in a way that, aligns with your own life and way of processing things.
Brother Akram, in addition to education, I know that the Masonic Legacy Society claims that it's found a profound approach to enlightenment. How is this so?
Well, I think just adding to what Mike and Brad just mentioned, the Freemasonry being an initiatic society, the entered apprentice is told from the beginning, what you came here to do is to learn to improve myself in Masonry. And it's important to remember, improve myself in Masonry, not just simply improve myself. You don't need Freemasonry to improve yourself in becoming a better writer, better speaker, getting over, building more your confidence, leadership skills. There are plenty of organizations out there that do that. It is improve yourself in Masonry. And the reason why the person is blindfolded esoterically, it's basically to tell that person, man or woman, initiate, no matter what you think you know, no matter how much experience you have, no matter what research you have done, you're coming in here blindfolded because we're going to give you a new set of eyes through which you will be able to see the world, your own world, everything that you have done, try to see them through a different set of eyes, enlightened, that will help you better yourself through the craft and build upon whatever you have done and take it in the direction of promoting freedom and builders in your communities. Now, this is very important. The real secret of Freemasonry, which is really the most dangerous thing for any autocratic society, is the fact that Masonry's main mission is to make as many master masons, but not in the exoteric, meaning, okay, how many members can we have? No. Yes, how many we initiate, but how many we graduate as free builders. Because the more free builders, enlightened individuals you have, so when you're building, you think of the tools. And each person has to have her or his own tracing board. So Masonry tells us, here are the tools, here's how they can be used, here's what you need to do to improve yourself, but now you have to chart your own course. So it's an individual journey in enlightenment. Now that individual journey, that's what the MLS is focusing on. The individual journey, you have to meditate on your own. And that is when we start by saying that is the most important lesson of what secrecy means. Secrecy teaches us the virtue of silence. And that is why the entered apprentice, and we focused on the entered apprentice in the document, because it teaches in the obligation, no matter what ritual it is. It doesn't matter, and we have so many rituals around the world. It focuses on this concept of secrecy, but let me ask you this. What does it mean if I don't reveal any letter or whatever? How is that going to help me become a better person and become a freer, enlightened builder in my community? So unless you start asking, what is this secrecy all about? It is silence. So meditate, you have to have silence. You have to create that space. The tiler is no longer only tiling the lodge. It's you, how you tile your own temple. You are your own senior warden, your own master, your own junior warden, and the tools are there. Are you going to build with beauty or ugliness? Are you going to build with strength or weakness? And what does strength mean? Is it level? Are you level internally? Are you leveling with others in the lodge? Are you truthful and level in dealings with members of your community? How do you strengthen it? So are you weakening or strengthening? Are you doing foolish things or being guided by wisdom? It is right there in front of us, but each person has their own circumstances, their own context in life, and see how they can improve themselves. So you have to start by meditating upon yourself. And then that silence virtue will teach you how to listen to your brethren, whether male or female, to your communities, to your friends, to everybody else. How can you understand where they're coming from if you don't learn how to silence yourself, silence your emotions, silence your thoughts? Don't think about how to respond. Just learn to silence so you can be a sponge and understand where your fellow human being is coming from. And then ask. Don't judge. Ask. Somebody in the previous panel, I heard one say, you don't ask rhetorical, or was it you? You made the comment, rhetorical questions. That's humiliating. Ask a question. And the purpose of asking a question is to seek greater clarity and understanding without making a judgment. And then based on that, you figure out how to build the relationship, because we're builders. We're not supposed to be destroyers. So this is it. And therefore, what the methodology, what MLS says, it is about you becoming an enlightened individual. And understand there are dark forces out there within you, and those dark forces take different forms. We live in a pandemic, right? A coronavirus pandemic still kind of. So it's nice to think of them as viruses, those dark forces. They keep coming back. They mutate. They morph. They don't die. They're constantly. So every master mason, whoever you are, wherever you are, please think of your ruffians as the symbols of those dark forces, and they are constantly taking different shapes. They're manifesting themselves differently within yourself, within the community, within our country, within whatever it is. But Masonry doesn't change anything except it helps graduate free, enlightened, engaged builders of communities. They will transform society, not Freemasonry.
Another applause. Yes.
Ditto.
Yeah. Copy paste. So I've had the honor of going through the training, and one thing we'll talk about the mechanics here in a second, but I just wanted to share with everyone that one thing I do is I take the script, the meditation script, and I have read it with an object or a focus, like a symbol in our craft, as that kind of point of focus. So I've read the script, the meditation, recorded it, and then I use that in my own voice as I prepare myself in my meditation. So this is a very powerful tool to achieve that goal of being an enlightened free builder. So let's talk about the mechanics. How does it work? If someone wants to, we have a lot of leaders, different lodges here. If someone wants to go through the training and bring the MLS framework either to themselves, to their community, or to their lodge, how does that operate?
So as the first thing that somebody should do is to download the document itself and to read it. It's available on Masonic Legacy Society 2026.com. And to really to read that. And there's also you could reach out to us and we can connect you with somebody. We've trained, I want to say it must be 40 or 50 brothers to facilitate specifically at this point. So you could get together with them, but to explain the process a little bit, to what you said, you've been introduced to the process a little bit this weekend because the way that Chuck led that meditation is very, very similar, if not directly of what we use as a meditation in the first part of this process. So if you were here on that first morning and participated in the meditation, then you already kind of have an idea of what we do. The next aspect out of that, after you come out of that reflective state, is that we give you an opportunity to reflect on that in a written way. We ask you to bring a notebook and we ask you to write down your experiences in the meditation, how you felt, what you saw, what did you experience? And then the next aspect after that is to have a facilitated discussion with the other brethren that you're in the room with and to get their understanding of it. And what we ask is that everybody communicate in the way that's authentic to them, but also leave room and have respect for the others in the room to have their own opinions and to come from their space and not to try to force them in a box that we're comfortable with, which is very rare at this time period. And so after that discussion, we have a wrap up at the end of it where we ask what went well and what didn't go well. So that's kind of the process there. On top of that, I think one of the most important parts, especially when we're internalizing education, the way that we're talking about, and what's unique to this process, is that there are some concepts that we ask you, a framework that we try to have you use. And that framework is one that you think of the symbol in the terms of your internal lodge, which is the lodge which is inside of you, and the external lodge, which is the room that we're sitting in or the brothers that you happen to be in lodge with, and the universal lodge, which is the greater community that's around us. So we think of these symbols not just in this very intellectual way, but across those different boundaries as we expand out into the world. We also ask that you think of them in terms of the emotional, the intellectual, the physical, and the spiritual aspects of yourself, which is something that I think you don't see a lot, right? I mean, whoever thinks like, how does the opening of a lodge affect me emotionally? Most times we just try to get it done as quickly as possible and move on, right? I mean, when we ask you to do this, we get some very, very interesting responses to this. One of the things that comes up that I'm always impressed with is this is a very simple idea. We talked about simple ideas this year or this weekend, and it's a very simple idea. It's just how profound, you used the word profound before, how profound it is. In some of these facilitations, I have seen grown men cry due to their understanding of a symbol and how it relates to them personally. I have seen people have responses that during the meditation, they saw family members that had died. They saw soldiers that they had served with that died in their meditations and connected that to it. One time we stopped a little bit early and let a brother call a mentor of his that was dying at the time because he wanted to thank him for who he was to him as a person. I mean, this is an aspect of Freemasonry that's often not explored, especially when we use the term education. And it's that personal aspect of what it means to be a human being. And this process is very useful to that.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Mike, fantastic. I just want to really add something. when we speak about Masonic education, there are many aspects of it, and they are all of equal importance. So it starts obviously with understanding the ritual. This is the basis. Everything has to do with the ritual. Then having lectures and presentations and bringing individuals to engage in these and listening to different interpretations is really also very important, because it triggers thoughts, reflections, especially if people are really listening. But the third part, which is the one where we found that was most needed, is how do we then, from that, how does a Mason then start speculating? Because we are speculative, and speculation meaning you. How do you speculate now yourself on the ritual to improve yourself and graduate ultimately as a master-free builder? If you don't jump to that third phase, then it remains an intellectual. And this is important. We remain an intellectual Masonic organization, quote unquote, if we engage into that type of Masonic education. We need to get to that third phase, and the lodge can offer ways to help individuals start doing that search. And that is at the essence of. And when you think about it, as a human being, doesn't matter again what your gender is, as a human being, you have four natures: physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. So if you want to build yourself, you need to work on all four. If you want to be well-balanced internally, you try to build all four equally. So don't forget that. And therefore, every aspect of the ritual is touching these four. You just need to ask those questions. Second is what Mike mentioned. Always think the lodge itself, this is the incubator. So what are the lodge programs? What are we doing when we come to lodge? Are we stimulating this? Because the lodge mirrors my inner temple. We all have, it doesn't matter what ritual. Listen to me, it doesn't matter what ritual you follow. The entered apprentice degree tells you the landscape of Freemasonry, period. Okay? It's the temple is you. Every aspect of the lodge is you. So, therefore, what happens in the lodge needs to triggers and incentivize you to do your own now building of the temple. And once you do that, then you can go and do something in the community. How can you really build in the community if you did not build yourself first? How can you promote true freedom? True freedom. Welcome to relief. Welcome to relief. You know, innovation. Look at these words, okay? They have different meanings in Freemasonry from the common English language. So in common English language, when we talk about innovation, for example, okay, innovate, yet in Freemasonry, we say, no, there are no innovations in Freemasonry. What are we talking about? It's the same word. Is this contradiction? No, it's just going back. Etymology is important, and just think of the deeper meaning. So you don't recreate or create a new Freemasonry, you focus on it, but you're constantly adapting and changing because we live in this world, not necessarily of this world. Okay, so it's the same thing. Relief is what people call charity outside, for God's sake. So why do we have relief and charity in Freemasonry if they have the exact meaning? No, they don't. Otherwise, we would not be speaking in the ritual of relief and of charity separately. Okay, charity, both of them have to do with freedom. One has to do with you, and the other one has to do with freedom. And relief is, how do I relieve myself from the things that shackle me, the things that bring me down, that take away my freedom. Okay, so the first thing is silence. So you get this, where's that? This. That is the first thing in this modern world. Okay, I get this. I mean, like it's an addiction. Wait, step away. Silence. This is noise. Step away and reflect and meditate before you engage. And you determine then, do I engage? It's like the master with the gavel. Are you ready to govern? There's the first gavel down to get people to get. The second gavel is, are you ready to govern? So gavel yourself. These are very practical tools, and that's what we're talking about. Every person needs to develop their own way of doing it. The facilitation that Mike talked about is fundamental because it encourages each and every person to express in a safe environment, which is the lodge, to express their own experience, their own speculation. It is not an intellectual debate. You're not thinking how to respond to the brother who already said something. So the competition is taken out. This is a higher level of communicating. And now I am really listening to you. This is your own experience, for God's sake. I am listening to you and I'm learning something about you that I did not know before. And that helps build the mystic tie of the brotherhood. It is not the intellectual competition. That will never do it. The mystic tie is when we spiritually connect with our differences. Well, I shouldn't say differences. Let's stick to the word distinctions. That's a beautiful word in our ritual because differences has like, there are distinctions among men and women, but that doesn't mean that we cannot be all brothers.
Yes. Oh, another one. Wow. Okay. So it's not encouraged, but I do want to underscore the fact that this can take 15 minutes, right? Like every lodge meeting has at least 15 minutes to bring this practice to the table. So for those of you thinking about how to introduce this type of work for the benefit that you've heard described so articulately, 15 minutes is really all it takes, and someone to lead that charge. Tell us a little bit about the success that you've seen, how this is reaching different parts of the globe, and then we're going to turn it over, and I'm sure all of you have questions, so we're going to leave some time for that. What kind of success has the Masonic Legacy Society seen since its inception?
Yeah, I think to Mike's point from earlier, we have, I would say close to 50 facilitators throughout the United States and abroad. You can find those on our website. You can just go to Masonic Legacy Society 2026.com and I think put in your zip code, like all that fun Google stuff to find out who's closest to you. But personal success, I'll kind of speak to what I've seen. So, I went through facilitation in 2020, and then I've facilitated almost 20 sessions since then. Most of those have been virtual. Ian and I were speaking about this yesterday, and most of those are not regionally close to me. I have brothers that are in Kentucky, but then I have brothers that are in the Carolinas. I have a brother that's in Michigan, and that's an ongoing session. And really the success there has been to expand their understanding to this process, not just in a group setting, which is what Mike kind of explained, that the facilitation process, that is in a group setting, but then to take that back into their own lives individually. And that's what I've kind of gained from that is, I have an hour and almost an hour and a half drive each way to lodge twice a month. So that's the perfect time for me to kind of jump into opening my own lodge and a little bit of reflection. But I think just the exposure that we've had nationally of what it is, working into lodges, but then also to Akram's point, it's not just, the blue lodges. I've had conversations and had meditations around Scottish Rite Masonry. I've had conversations, some of these contemplative discussions get into, our connections with Masonry and our families, or Masonry and our vocations. So, just seeing the eye-opening that brothers are having from the 50 of us that are facilitators, but really going back and saying, how many sessions have you led in your lodge? Obviously that's 20 to 60 brothers. How many sessions are you having with the people, those individuals in your circle of influence? So I think really this is a grassroots movement. And to Akram's point from earlier, there is no governing body here. There are no principal officers. There is no bank account. We're not publicizing and pushing this because we want to grow it for the masses. This is a grassroots, endeavor to really help individuals understand the process and how to self-reflect. So,
thank you for sharing that. The work is still to be done in many ways. All right. What questions do we have from our audience?
I have one. So, having the privilege to have gone through the training, I was wondering if there's any plans to maybe have sessions, a few times a year, to where everyone who's gone through it can again gather and have a really deep, strong meditation with the brothers who have also gone through the same training.
Well, we're in fact having conversations about where do we go with the people that have been trained. So let me just clarify about this whole training thing. What you see online is something that can be, you download it and then you can run with it, period. There's no training of any kind needed for anything. And there's work that you can do individually. We worked over a 3-year period, and we've had workshops working in a closed environment in Washington, D.C. We had Las Vegas and Phoenix to come up with this concept and approach that can be adapted no matter what the ritual is and no matter where the person is. Okay. And again, whether you're a Mason or non-Mason, puts you, and you can use it in any way, shape, or form. The workshops we did were to train facilitators. So you can understand that. In other words, we did not hold sessions so we can, contemplate and speculate on a meaning of something with a degree. We've used that to help train facilitators so they can be out there, and there are about 50 of them. So how do we go from here? We're in the process of seeing that, no question. The COVID, when we used the online, the virtual, was enabled us to reach a lot of people, across the country. But we're in the process of doing that. That's one. But more importantly for us is how do we get the 50 that are out there really connected? In other words, people, they cover pretty much the country now. So if your lodge is somewhere, as Mike said earlier, and you're interested in, drop a note to RJ. Hey, do you have anybody who's gone through this in Colorado, in Kentucky, in Iowa, in California, whatever? You have several from California, and then have things done. See, the whole idea is to create a web. It's freedom. We don't want to be the same people right here running everything. It's all about empowerment, and you run with it and create as many connections as possible. But as far as those already have gone through this, yes, we're thinking about what's the next move. Thanks.
Questions?
Somebody else. I would like to say, Brother Akram, if I may call you one. Thank you so much for bringing up female Masons and the role of women in Masonry. And you're absolutely right that enlightenment is very much necessary, whether man or woman. A lot of us, we talked about single mothers and how we raise sons and children in general. And mothers do have a great influence on their children. And what better way to create a better society, better humanity than enlightening the woman? And I, being a female Mason, can attest to that. And I have seen myself grow as an individual and continuously growing. I'm not perfect, nowhere near to be. But thank you for that. My question to the panel is, where do you see the role of a female Mason in the Masonic Society 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
Okay, sure. Then I'll start. Well, thank you for your nice words, and I listened carefully to your comment earlier, and I thank you for having made that as well. Within a couple of years of my initiation into Freemasonry, my wife said, "Akram, you've changed. What is it?" And I was fortunate because I truly felt something the ceremonies, all three were done so perfectly well. For me, it was perfectly well. I'm sure they missed a word here and there, but who cared? The way they did, they kept that sacred, aura. They created that. This is a most important moment for you going through that ceremony. So in my mother lodge, Potomac Lodge number 5, they did that, and I felt something go up and down my spine. I really felt something special take. I couldn't understand what it was, but that triggered me. Anyway, within 2 years, she was very much interested in understanding what was happening, and that got her into her own Masonic journey. She's been a Mason for over 20 years, and she finally, well, not finally, but decided, having been introduced to the English tradition in Freemasonry, which the United Grand Lodge of England considers to be practicing, to be regular in their practice of Freemasonry. After all, they gave them the ritual. It's really the English ritual. But anyway, and she founded a lodge in Washington, D.C., and about 70 women Masons came from England in May of 2019 to establish it in Washington, D.C. There, I know she is, I think the Masonic Legacy Society, the concept, the approach is necessary, very important. In our country, when I think of the United States, and we talked about it around the world, if we look at the level, it's right there. I can see it. All of you will have to turn back, but that's it. That's the senior warden. That's the level. Well, things are not leveled. There is imbalance. And whenever there is a lack of balance, there is weakness. So things need to be more leveled. As my wife, and who is my brother, would say, the scales of life need to be balanced. How can we advance as a society? And I'm speaking now as an American here. And more importantly, 2026. What is the next phase of the great experiment? We're going to plateau. Okay, we're plateauing in this great experiment. What are we going to do? Are we going to take it to the next level? Or is it going to be the beginning of the demise? And mark my words, my brethren, the demise as well as the prosperity of Freemasonry are directly connected to either the prosperity or the demise of the great experiment in this country, because they are mystically connected as an experiment, okay, of constantly improving. So our country is at a major crossroads. How can we reinvigorate the great experiment? Where do we move forward if we do not understand how to balance the scales when it comes to the role of women and men in this society of ours as co-builders? And you know what? When people tell me about all the bad things in the experiment, yes, no bad things. An experiment by definition is you're experimenting and there will be failures. The key point is, do we learn from the failure? Do we move forward? We don't get stuck in the past. We keep constantly focusing on building a better, more enlightened, therefore more inclusive, freeing. Are we creating more free people? Trust me, the more free people we have, the safer humanity is, and the more it will be able to resist. This is the immunity that humanity will have against any form of dictatorship, autocratic. Like they're coming all over. They're the manifestation of those ruffians in the external world. They're coming, and there's an attraction to them. Oh, man, they're strong. They're powerful. They get things done. Oh, my God. Okay, so it is more needed, in fact, for women in this country, because women who want to approach Freemasonry to help them simply create a social club or coming together as women around the ritual, but create that fellowship that maybe they don't have may not find in other women organizations, then they're shortchanging themselves. They really need to build them. There's something that is fascinating fascinating about the ritual. The more one really digs deep into it and internalize it and personalize it, you feel a sense of freedom. I'm telling you, I cannot describe it with words, but nothing will shake you. Nothing. And that is the beauty, which is the threat for autocratic people. That is the threat. Masonry creates incredibly powerful, free individuals that no one is going to be able to simply press a button and move them like robots in one way or another. They will always approach things in a critical way and always thinking, is this for betterment of our community or not? It's simple. We've got three major tools. Enough. Yes.
So I think first of all, for a long time, I think we've acted like female Freemasonry hasn't existed already for hundreds of years, right? Which is wrong. I think what I'm seeing as a group of people that were largely disenfranchised and couldn't even vote a little over 100 years ago, as more women take roles in society, more important roles in society, when we have a woman president, when we have women CEOs and generals and everything else, I think that might be the most exciting part of Freemasonry right now, is the potential that's there. And I think if Freemasonry doesn't get out of its own way, we want to decry the fact that we haven't had boosts in membership. There are a large amount of people, and women are one of those cultures, but there's also other nationalities that have largely been left out of this conversation for years that are now getting a seat at the table. And I think it's one of the most exciting parts of it, is that I think you could see potentially, maybe not in 5 years, but especially with UGLE already acknowledging the fact that women Freemasons exist, although not recognizing them in a formal way, I think you could see women Freemasonry leading the charge and us following behind as they continue to innovate and make this a stronger society. And I have to tell you that the women that I've been engaged with in Lou's Lodge mostly, and the women that I met here when I was here last time, they're some amazing people. I mean, they're people that I look up to, and I don't have a problem saying that. I don't think that our discussions about masculinity need to exclude other people. And I think that the more we come along over these next 5, 10, 50 years, I think that you're going to see that become a reality as more people realize the fact that we don't need to exclude people from the conversation, and that it's just as much of your right to be a Mason as it is my right to be a Mason. And being the husband of a woman that has 2 degrees from Mount Holyoke and is very proud of who she is as a woman, and is perfectly fine with me being a Mason, and having a daughter, I'm glad that there are going to be strong role models out there that are, whether female or male, that are there for society to help better and bring the vision that Akram talks about.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was going to say exactly what you said, Akram. So thank you for mentioning that. But I want to thank you for your question. That could be a whole nother conversation, which would be exciting. But I would say, tying it back to Masonic Legacy Society, that nowhere in the framework, the document, the website, any of us, does it say male eyes only. And I've had that discussion with women Freemasons. I've had that discussion with women that are not Freemasons. I've had that discussion with my wife, because we've started to utilize and introduce meditation to help understand patients, because I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and they're ridiculously crazy. So I would just reinforce that nowhere does it say male eyes only or men only. So thank you for your question.
May I add something? You brother just triggered something else. So it's amazing how one's horizons can really expand almost instantaneously if one remains open to the idea that it is introspection, it is speculation, and it focuses on freedom. So you can see things and suddenly relieve yourself of certain preconceptions, and now the sky becomes the limit. So, for example, as you were talking, this is the triggering mechanism, which is incredible. We look at our society today, this polarization, these narratives. And that's why I say it's important to take a step back and disengage from what I call the fog of information. We live in a world, those of you who know anything in the military about the fog of war, where you don't know really in the battlefield where the enemy is or who's the enemy, where the fire is coming from. It's so foggy out there. So we live in a world of fog of information. There's too much data. There's too much information coming at you, bombarding you 24 hours a day, and you don't even know where to go or what to do with it. So it's important to remain free, is to step back and be guided from within to figuring out how to navigate this world, and look for the practical tools that can help you enhance your freedom. In other words, whether it's through artificial intelligence or anything else, these are practical, very practical teachings of Freemasonry towards freedom. So we come in, the initiate comes in from the beginning, learns about 2 columns, learns about black and white squares. The initiate learns from the beginning, there is a duality and there's going to be polarization. And you're going to be pushed one way or another. And the EA learns from the beginning, don't go this way or that way. You need to bring balance. And you're the 3rd column. You are the 3rd column. You bring balance to yourself because you have the feminine and the masculine within you. You're going to have the positive and negative within you. And you're going to be pushed to fall into one extreme or another within you. You need to find that balance and then find that balance outside. So, for example, that's why I love this free and builder. There's this whole conversation about this whole country and how it started and the founding fathers. And then we had slavery. I'm just giving you here some applications, how I personally, as a free builder, think about these things. And I see this polarization. So you have to demean these because of those. You have to elevate this and demean the others. And it's like a polarized thing. And then I ask, weren't they all builders? Didn't they all contribute to the building of this great experiment? Some were free, others were not. But if they all built, can we use that building concept as a bridge and move us forward? Think how to relieve yourself from the narrow vision of things so we can build bridges amongst our communities. This is the 3rd column. We're taught that. And this is not Freemasonry going out there and organizing events to tell people that, no. It is doing things amongst ourselves, within our lodges, to produce men and women who are enlightened, who can then team up with others and be the bridge builders in their communities. That's what it's all about. And it is needed today more than ever. More than ever. Thank you.
Well said. Well said. Let's give the panelists one large South Pasadena 290 round of applause. Thank you.